Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Start Small, Think Big podcast brought to you by Digital Meld. My name is Brad Groux, co-founder and CEO of Digital Meld.
And I am Scott Morris, founder and CEO of Propulsion AI.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for joining us. We had a cancellation this week, and we were able to get Scott on a short notice, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. We just caught up yesterday on our pre-call, and Scott has a unique background with, especially with the HR and anyone who's worrying about all of the job pain points coming up. I think with this new AI and automation era, I think Scott's going to provide truly invaluable insights and share some things about his platform, Propulsion AI, as well, and what that kind of startup journey was, and what kind of things for other folks who are looking to start their own foray into the great unknown. And so, again, Scott, thanks for joining us. I guess we could just start off really quickly. Just give us a couple of minutes of who you are, where you come from, what got you to this point utilizing AI, and into a founder.
Well, gosh, that's like in a couple of minutes, huh? So I've got 25 years in the profession of HR, about 20 of those in C-level roles, and organizations as large as 15,000 and down to 250. I actually think the 250 side served me better in my career, because in a small company, nobody cares what your title is. You just roll up your sleeves, you get the work done. And what that size of company did is it gave me hands-on experience in every single one of the disciplines of human resources. And I think, if I'm going to be critical about my own profession for just a second, I think when you think of HR, when a lot of people think of HR, they think of administration. And I think you got to really kind of divide into two camps. There's risk manager HR people, and then there are workforce productivity HR people. And I like to think of myself as the latter. I don't care a ton about compliance. I don't care a ton about risk management. I recognize their importance in the enterprise, but I've always been more interested in why people want to come to work and how to help them enjoy the experience and perform better. And that obviously has an impact on the organization's bottom line. I've been doing that for a very long time, and that sort of transitioned into an opportunity to found a software company. One of the things that I have thought about over the time that I've spent doing the work is that a lot of HR tech, the people that make it, they always seem like they're adjacent to the problems. It never feels like the tech is made by people who've actually had to get in there and use elbow grease and solve the problems themselves. And I got this crazy idea that somehow, because I was elbow deep in all of the work, that I would be able to build better software that did better things for people and ultimately help to make their journeys at work both more productive and more enjoyable. And that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome, and that's really aligns well with us as well, Digital Meld as a company, because we talk all the time that decisions are being made at the macro level view. You really needed it, the boots on the ground, like we say, the people adjacent to the problem, the people living with the problem every single day are the ones that should be helping to build these solutions. And I think that's where the AI boom or bust, whether side of that conversation you're on, is kind of failing right now. You have these guys in Silicon Valley building tools and solutions who don't actually understand the businesses, who don't understand the problems these businesses are trying to solve. They're trying to build these Swiss Army knives, right? Instead of trying to build a scalpel that just solves one specific crucial problem like Propulsion does when it comes to HR and things. So I really do appreciate that. And I think it probably resonates a lot with the folks who listen to this podcast, and then also, our potential clients and customers as well, because there's a lot of problems that need to be solved out there. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is with institutional knowledge. And AI and automation are just tools and the tool belt, right? And you have to fit the tool around the job or the problem you're trying to solve, not the other way around.
It's funny that you say that. I like to make the analogy that, I can go to Home Depot, I can buy the very best hammer, but that isn't going to build a house for me until you put that hammer in the hands of a craftsman. And we think that the manager who is on the front lines of getting work done in a company, we think they are the craftsman. And the problem is that they haven't always had access to all of the knowledge and information and skill sets that they need. And I go back to my comment about sort of the two camps of HR people, right? The one camp that's playing not to lose, that's playing defense, that's playing risk management, that's playing, policy and compliance stuff. They don't have the consulting skills nor the business acumen to really go out and help those managers get more out of their people. And what I think is about 10% of the population that does have the consulting skills, the business acumen, the ability to help those managers really utilize people as strategic assets, not only help them build careers, but help them build the company as they're doing it, those people are in short supply. And, our first thought and our first goal was to democratize that expertise. When you think about small companies, they don't have access to top tier talent. They do now. When you think about large companies, they frequently run out of bandwidth because they're getting consumed by all the tactical work. Not anymore. And that's, I think, the niche that Propulsion AI ultimately plays in. And to give people a sense of what we do, we are building an HR team with just artificial intelligence. And that probably scares the heck out of some people, and it probably gets some people really excited to know more. And it's why I'm excited to have the conversation.
No, that's great. I will say for folks who listen to us that Insperity is our PEO, so they're our benefits provider. They do our payroll and things like that. They're our de facto HR team, but at the end of the day, they're very limited on what they can do. Insperity is it's a free plug. They're not paying me to say this, but they're a great partner for a startup. But at the end of the day, we're going through some hiring now, and they can help us with job, coming up with some like pay ranges and stuff like that, but they're not an HR team. And we've just noticed that we're going through these strugglings now as we're scaling up. And so I thank you for you giving me access to the Propulsion software to kind of pick and do some studies. And I think I'm going to end up doing like a blog post of some sort for that to showcase that journey as well. So stay tuned for that, listeners. But let's talk about the pain points Propulsion solves specifically for like idea stage founders or solopreneurs who are struggling to launch, and like how can they utilize the knowledge that you've learned from starting your own business, but also, and then your decades of experience as a C-suite, and then also utilize these tools to help like democratize and or what we like to say punch above their weight class. How can they do that?
Well, so let's divide that question. If you don't mind me dividing your question, Brad, into sort of kind of two parts. One is kind of the journey as a founder, and growing a company. That's one aspect that I hear in your question. The other is what is it that we as a company are trying to solve? Here's the image that I want you to get in your head right now. Think about the manager you always wanted to work for. Think across your career about that one team that you always wanted to be on, or think about the manager that you were really thankful that you worked with. Now, whoever just came to mind for you and for the people that are listening, I'm willing to bet that person occupies that space in your head because they were doing things differently. And they did things differently because they knew different things. And specifically, here's what I think they knew. They knew how every role on that team fit into the broader strategy because they had thought it through. They knew the outcomes that they needed each person to produce. And I want to draw a distinction between outcomes and tasks. I come in and I have to do a task, but that task is a means to an end. That end is important to the business. They were focused on what that end was, not just the tasks. They knew specifically how they were going to measure that person's success. They could define good. And they knew the competencies and skills that they needed, not just now, but the ones that they wanted to help that person acquire in the future. Those 5 things made that manager different. Now, here's the big problem. Most managers are not naturally that manager. They have the ability to become that manager, but they don't start there naturally. Bigger problem. Most HR people can't help them. So they're out there on their own. They want to be a great manager, but they don't have a good coach. That's the problem that we solve. We coach managers to shift their thinking from task orientation to outcome orientation. We help them make connections of that work and why that box is on the org chart to the broader strategy in the business. And then we handle all of the documentation for them. Now, what does that do? It means that you are going to fundamentally be faster and more targeted with your sourcing when you're looking for people from the outside. It means that you're going to make better selection choices. Here's a reality, and we know this from an article that was published in Fortune magazine. The authors followed 20,000 new hires. Guess what? 46% of them failed in the first 18 months. That's a really sobering statistic. Here's another one. It comes from Gallup. Less than half of workers understand the expectations that their manager has for them, for the work that they do. They come in, less than half of the population, 47% to be exact, they come in every day and they're foggy about what it is that they're supposed to do, what it is that their manager wants them to do. That's a really sobering statistic, right? The manager that is in control of those 5 factors, how the role fits strategy, the outcomes that you need, how you're going to measure success, competencies, the skills that you need in the role, that manager guides that journey better. So not only do they hire better, but they manage differently. They have different one-on-one conversations with their employees. They write different kinds of performance evals for their employees. And the performance evals are growth focused. They're not corrective focused because they can be, because they understand where they're going. That's what we do. That's the pain point that we solve.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, specifically the output, driven, outcome driven results, right? We talk because we follow we're a consulting company first and foremost, but we follow the McKinsey and Company method. It's like you literally just ask your customer, client, or partner, however you want to label them, is what problem are you trying to solve? That's your Mount Everest, right? That's what you're trying to climb. And like I think whenever you define that, it gives you a goal to reach. And I think a lot of people listening probably resonate with what you're talking about. They've been that 47% where they go in and their middle management, specifically in corporate America, where middle management kind of just lives in this limbo. It's like, I don't have to make decisions. People don't know I'm even here kind of thing. That's one reason I got out of corporate America. So I think that probably really resonates with folks. And so I think it's great to know that there's going to be tools to helping folks specifically like myself and others in the startup space who don't have the ability to hire. Because as you know, a good HR team is several people. It's not one person. You have to have different skill sets for, benefits person and an HR person, someone who's doing the other internal policies and procedures and things. It takes a village, as you say, and now you can use these agents or AI to help you do that. And I think it's really important that people just extrapolate that for not just for the HR side, but you'll be able to do this in the future for other segments across your business as well. And this is going to empower people to have the 10-person billion-dollar companies, as you have these people who are leading these teams of agents or teams of AIs to do the things that others would normally do.
Can I do an example really quickly? This concept's really, really important. Imagine for a second the role of an accountant. So in an accountant's job description, something that we would traditionally see in a legacy job description is something like follow up on delinquent accounts, which means that somebody somewhere, that manager said, oh my God, we got fires burning. Like we got to go collect money. I need somebody to come in and sit here and make phone calls and write emails and collect money for me. That thinking boxes you in to a job that is not engaging. It lacks purpose and meaning, which is what most employees today are really looking for in work. And it leads to where you have to micromanage the work. You want to understand like the difference between, an organization that cares or that doesn't care rather about where their people work, remote work versus being in the office. I will tell you at the root of that is if you're managing to outcomes rather than tasks, you don't care where people work. It doesn't matter because the outcome, there is a measurable result to the outcome, and you don't have to see the work being performed to know that it happened. So in this case of the accountant, and we say follow up on delinquent accounts, what is that a means to an end? Most of the time, the end is what's called days sales outstanding. It's a measure of how fast the organization can collect money that it's owed. And if you have a company that has $10 million in annual recurring revenue, ARR, and you move DSO, days sales outstanding, from 90 days to 60 days, you create $833,000 worth of value. So why do we tell the person that's in that job, your job is to follow up on delinquent accounts? Why don't we tell them your job is to bring down DSO and keep it as low as we can get it? The former is a task. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to do drudgery work. The latter is something that's really important to the business because it creates value. And so the benefits of shifting that thinking away from the task and onto the outcome, first of all, it's really, really hard to do it. And that's why a lot of managers don't do it. We built an AI coach that helps draw those insights out of the manager's head and helps document them. If I shift my thinking and I get focused on the outcomes, now what happens is the person comes in and they say, hey, Scott, like if that's my job, shouldn't I be doing these things too? And I look at that and I say, yes, like do those things, right? I'm not on the front line. I didn't see that. You're closer to the work. But look at what just happened. Now, because I've shifted away from task thinking and onto outcomes thinking, I've got an employee who is now taking initiative because they own that work, because they own the outcome, because they're invested in it. They have a job that has meaning and purpose. They can see straight line to how they're creating benefit for the company. And they know that even on a hard day where they've got to do some drudgery, because they're going to have to make some calls, they're going to have to write some emails, but they understand why they're doing that. And that why makes all the difference in the world. We built an AI coach that helps draw that out of the manager because most managers start their thinking with tasks. But if we can get them to shift to outcomes, now there's a reason that that box is on the org chart, and it's more than to do drudgery.
I love that drawing information out of the manager, because we talk about this all the time, but the baby boomers are retiring, right? And we see this in the business world and we've said it on this podcast before, but over the next few years, we're going to have what was equivalent to, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, of people retiring and their institutional knowledge and their history of all their work history retiring with them. And it's just lost to the ether. And so now that we can utilize these tools to capture that data in and to gain insights in, and be proactive rather than reactive whenever issues happens, I think that's going to be truly, truly revolutionary. So I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper on like how Propulsion works, and because that's really, there's I think it's input, and then there's some AI orchestration, and then actionable deliverables. So can you just give us a quick 2 or 3 minutes about how the platform works and how you feel that the AI is utilized, the process is improved because of the AI?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of different use cases. Let me do the really basic one, the garden variety one, really quickly for you. So we built Athena so that she processes and thinks a lot like a human. We like to say that what we created is a meld between digital and human intelligence. And by that, I mean, we started out when we launched the company, we started out with over 100, might even been knocking on 125, 150 interviews with top heads of HR, top heads of talent, HR business partners, recruiters. And we learned about the frameworks that top professionals were using to help managers uncover insights about what they needed on their teams. And we took that and we blended it with a combination of programmed logic and generative artificial intelligence. And so Athena will ask questions. Athena is the name of our first digital teammate. She's the first of about 6 that are on our roadmap to release, that are working throughout the talent management lifecycle. Athena's focus is role design. And so she asks questions of the user, which is usually for our customers, the direct manager. They're the expert in the work. They're just not expert in everything else. They're not expert as consultants to get the stuff out of their head. They're not expert in policy. They're not expert in compliance, right? So Athena's going to ask questions. She's going to get answers. She's going to put different answers together and reason about them. She's going to take that hypothesis that she has, create some content, give it to the user, and then take feedback. And we work in what we call an intelligent iteration loop. So Athena will make some content, get feedback from the user, rework the content, and move on. And she builds every successive piece on previous pieces, which is exactly how a human would do it. And so this conversation, which can be as short as 15 minutes, is going to help the manager really think about the role and why they want it. We hear from a lot of our customers, hey, I started out thinking I wanted this, but as it turns out, I want this other thing over here. And that's the real value that Athena delivers. She creates clarity in the manager's mind about what they need, why they need it, how they're going to measure success, and what are the characteristics of the person they want to bring into that role. So in the course of that conversation, because she's digital, she's also doing all of the documentation for you. And so when you finish in that conversation, you have a performance-based job description, complete with KPIs, turned into OKRs, first year measurable results for the output of that role. You have an SEO optimized posting for the web. You have social media content for X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You've got a recruiter spec so that the team that's doing your candidate sourcing can go out and be really targeted. You've got an interviewer guide. You've got the beginning of a performance management charter. And Athena can also do compensation analysis on base salary, given a geography and a reporting relationship and the duties and the skills to make sure that you're equitable in the market. So she documents all of that. And the documentation is a secondary value. The clarity in the manager's mind is the first value. But the document's important because remember, less than half of workers are clear about what their manager expects. So that performance-based job description is a document that is not an administrative document. It's not an administrative have to. It's a tool that creates clarity in the mind of the person that you put in the role. And the posting, and Athena documents and creates job postings that go out to the web very differently. A really good posting is not a job description. It's marketing copy. And its purpose is to attract in top talent and get them to be interested in the work and to scare off everybody else so that you don't go blind reading resumes for people that aren't ready to take on the hard work. It doesn't matter how great your company is to work for. If the individual isn't ready to do the things and produce the outcomes that you need produced, they're not ready to be considered for that role. And Athena writes a job posting.
That sounds great. And again, this is very strange because over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been going through all those processes manually. Not manually, I've been using ChatGPT and Gemini and others to help streamline that process, but literally the analysis, the salary analysis, the writing a job description, writing the contract to get what is expected of the worker, all those I've literally been doing this for the past 2 weeks. And if I could have known, then I could have done this
Can
much
I
easier.
make a Can I
Yeah.
make a decision for a second, Brett? Because a question that we get a lot is, well, why wouldn't I just do this with ChatGPT? And obviously you have done it, but I'm willing to bet, and I'm looking to you for some body language that confirms or denies this. The problem with ChatGPT is you have to lead it. You have to know what to ask for, how to ask for it, what to do with the output, to differentiate between good output and bad output. With Propulsion AI, you don't have to do that. Propulsion AI leads you. You have to lead a generic large language model like ChatGPT. And that's what makes the platform better. ChatGPT also isn't going to scale. So, our focus is really companies with between 250 and 1,000 employees and small HR teams. And what those small HR teams need is capacity. And if, as they start to bring Athena in, and hopefully our other teammates as well, that creates capacity for the humans to do other things, hopefully more consultative and strategic HR activities. But Athena can work with managers directly. ChatGPT, you're going to get a different output for everybody that uses it. The output with Athena is very consistent, very structured, and leads itself to scale very nicely across the enterprise.
No, and I mean it's a world we live in as well. Like we tell people all the time, catered solutions are always going to beat overarching Swiss Army
Vertical.
knife solutions. Like it's going to and at the end of the day, that's what GPTs are. They're the Swiss Army knives, right? They're not going to be surgical. And I think a lot of the problems with what's happening with the AI boom right now, again, as I kind of touched on this earlier, is like the guys in Silicon Valley are just building what they think the most people are going to want to use, not what is actually going to be useful. And I think what's going to be useful is those catered solutions and catered tools specific for very specific job needs and recommendations, whether it's project management or HR or accounting and those things. I think you're going to always have a much better time whenever you have those solutions that are
Well,
specific for the job.
I don't think a lot of people realize. I mean, I know you guys do because you do a lot of Microsoft work, but like if you're in Microsoft products and you're using Copilot, Copilot uses OpenAI's models.
Mhm.
Right. So they've taken a base model and they've created a very special use case for it, which is really about the integration of that model into the Microsoft product. Right. And we are excited for lots of companies to be able to do that. We are believers strongly at Propulsion that, we're nearing the end of the era where we're going to see a lot of large um, enterprise style, ERP style systems, particularly in HR tech. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to start to see a lot more sort of plug and play modules so that when something advances, you just unplug the old one and you plug the new one in and you've got better service for whatever variant of work you're talking about. Rather than the very big sort of workday implementations of the world where it's one system and they can't change that fast. They can't evolve that fast.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of brings us on to the next area where, the future of work and AI enablement is basically how we work is going to completely change and is already changing. Obviously, you built a tool that should change the lives of many, many, many mid-market HR teams, as an example. Again, since we do have some folks who are entrepreneurial and or looking to start their own thing, and I encourage everyone out there to take that leap to at least keep your day job while you're working on an idea, see things through fruition. It's been the most rewarding yet frustrating part of my life. But I tell people all the time, it's stressful, but it's my stress, and there's no stress like your stress. It's not someone else's stress being put on you. What are just some how do you feel like tools like not Propulsion but across the board are like redefining what the early stage entrepreneurship and early stage startup, and like again having people put together POCs really quickly, and how do you just see these tools changing business as we know it?
Well, I mean, look at what's possible right now that even a year ago was so much less possible. If you're going to go out, when you start a business, like the most important thing that you're doing is getting in touch with your customers your potential customer's pain. So really understanding who the ICP is, the ideal customer profile that you are trying to serve, and really understanding their pain. Well, look at what happens today. In any conversation we're in, we can have an AI note taker. I can take the transcript of those notes. And so imagine that I'm out doing 100 interviews. I take the transcript of each one of those notes and I bring it over to a model like Claude. And I outline a project and I help Claude to understand about what I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do it. And then I feed the transcript in and I ask it to mine out the insights that happened in the conversation relative to the problem that I'm trying to solve. Now imagine that that happens 150, 200 times over. Imagine now the kind of output that is possible, not just in terms of synthesizing notes from those conversations, but I can ask that model to uncover insights, to make connections. And that's what a lot of what generative artificial intelligence does really well. Large data set ingestion and then pattern identification. So, even the process of starting a business, I can't imagine starting a business without using artificial intelligence tools today to help uncover the things that I would miss, because as a human, I just simply can't get through all of the data.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we say technology is the great equalizer, right? It gives you the ability to, like I say, punch above your weight class and utilize those tools. And if you're not utilizing it, the competition is. That's just the way it is. In the U.S., we're competing with China as an example, and it goes down from there. And so I think the big thing is to not be afraid to utilize these tools. The big thing also is like to iterate quickly. We say we're SpaceX, not Boeing. We're going to blow up some rocket ships, but we're also going to catch them with chopsticks and land them on boats. And you don't get that you have to be bold to have those crazy ideas and belly flop a rocket and just some crazy sort of things. And I think that's the beauty of what's coming up is like, before you could have an ideas where a dime a dozen, but now you have people who have these great ideas and they have the tools to at least get a POC up really quickly or an MVP up really quickly to prove out that concept. Like you said, to understand the pain points of the problem you're trying to solve for the people you're trying to solve them for. And can you just talk about how you've mentioned this, but what that kind of looked like for Propulsion, how you found that product market fit, how you thought that like, hey, we can solve this problem and elevate the HR departments of these smaller companies that wouldn't normally have the capital to invest into hiring more for HR, but how that actually increases the output of the company as a whole as well.
Well, I mean, in the sake of transparency, I mean, I hate to bust the bubble, but like, I think there's this myth of product market fit. Like, I think it's a long time before you really get to product market fit. I think you've got to be constantly in listening mode and constantly in tuning mode. So I'm not sure we're there yet, to be honest with you. We're still listening to our customers. And I mean, I'll give you an example of this. We knew that there was a lot of pain from managers. The average manager spends about 17% of their time. That's a day a week compensating for underperforming employees. So if I could give you a day back, what would you do with it, right? And the key to getting that day back is having people that can work more autonomously. So we knew that that was a pain point that we wanted to address. Our customers tell us that their recruiting teams and their HR business partners save 4 to 5 hours per role when they're hiring from the outside if they let Athena do her job and then they come in behind her and do their job. 4 to 5 hours. That's an awful lot of capacity. And when you balance that against the cost of what a human is, right? Athena doesn't take breaks. Athena doesn't take vacation. Athena doesn't need benefits, right? She's there 24 hours a day waiting to help those managers, and the managers can work when and where they want. So let me tell you about some use cases that we didn't really expect. We have a customer, CEO was telling me the story the other day, who has said to her management team, I want all of our high potential employees to go work with Athena. What they do with her is they're building out their dream job in that company. Now, what that CEO told me was that's changed a lot of stuff for them. One is in the minds of their high potential employees, that conversation about their future just got really concrete. But for the managers, Athena is now helping uncover some roles that probably should be in the company. And because you understand what the role produces and how you're going to measure it, it's a pretty easy calculus to work backwards into what's the return on the investment that we would have in that salary. That's a use case we didn't expect. So we start to see those kind of use cases, and those are evolutions from where we started. I had a CFO tell me that Athena is changing the way that their headcount planning happens in the company. And you and I both know we've experienced it in the corporate world. I think every organization does this about the same way. You go at budget time, you go over to finance, you fill out their spreadsheet, and you say, here are the roles that I want. And then finance kind of does this thing and like, what's the best place for us to put the dollars? This CFO says, now what we're starting to do is say to all the managers, you have to go to Athena first and you have to work out the details of the role and then bring us the docs. And so now when they come over to finance, they fill out the spreadsheet for sure, but they also leave the job description and they're able to say, this is the role I want to hire. This is what it's going to do. This is how I'm going to measure the output. This is what I'm going to pay it. That's a really different approach to headcount planning than the traditional method. So we didn't expect those things when we started. And that's a part of this journey, and why I say, you got to constantly be in listening mode, because that's helping for us uncover, new opportunities. Tell you one more thing really quickly. That process of listening led us to recognize that Athena's coaching is not enough, that companies are going to have a legacy problem. Athena can coach managers going forward, but you have a bunch of job descriptions and roles that are already sort of designed. So we built in the capability for Athena to read and analyze 100% of the company's existing job descriptions and rewrite them, shifting them from task focus to outcomes focus, putting them into the library on the Propulsion AI platform, and then notifying the manager that they're there and ready to edit. And so Athena does that pre-work, that conversion, and then coaches the manager through the editing process. That's a new capability. We didn't start out with that, but we listened to what our customers were saying was important to them, and we gave Athena that capability.
That's great. And I think the insights you provided on that feedback loop, that constant listening, right? The constant adaptation to the needs of the customer, I think that should never stop. Elon Musk, for all his flaws, has a great saying: "There's the best process is no process." And it's not like he's not saying processes are important. It's that your job should always be able to have that feedback loop to streamline as best as you can, to improve as best as you can, and not be afraid to throw things away and start over again. And I think there's so many great startups stories have come from, like, they started in one area and then pivoted to go somewhere else because they didn't know, once it got in the hands of people, it just went in its own direction. And it's not really even really yours anymore, right? You're just a steward of that platform for the users who use it. And I think that's great in every aspect of business. That's something you should always have, is that feedback loop, but especially when you're building a product or service and supposed to be solving a problem for your end users and customers. So thank you for those insights. I really do appreciate that more people are seeing the need for that going forward, because I think the human touch is going to be even more important going forward as we have this automated world, as we have this AI world. So that kind of brings us into a conversation that we like to have on AI ethics and the human layer, because we like to say we don't do AI and automation for specifically, the beauty is with mid-market companies to begin with. They're in growth mode, right? They're trying to be that billion-dollar company. They're trying to be that next small enterprise. So they're looking to grow. They're not necessarily looking to cut headcount, where we know in the corporate world, they just go quarter by quarter, because corporate vice president's going to get their bonus and then cut people and then go right back to hiring people back the next. It's just a vicious cycle. But that's why we do love the mid-market companies, the $1 billion and under, the 1,500 employees under kind of thing as well, is because they do put a little bit more value, I think, on that human touch. But can you talk to just like how, maybe not even specifically how Propulsion is affecting, amplifying the human touch for people and freeing up them time to do what we call more meaningful work, right? Like, you have these HR people that are probably really strapped for time, and if they're not building out these job postings and stuff like that, they can focus on serving their actual people within the organization. Can you just talk about how that's actually becoming more important, or how do you feel it's even becoming more important as we get into the automated world?
I think that's, sorry to interrupt you. I think it's critically important. One of the things that frustrates me a little bit is that all of us seem to be naturally built to be looking for cheat codes and just looking for shortcuts. And I think one of the things that we would be well advised to do is stop trying to hand everything off to an artificial intelligence bot that's just going to do the work for you. I think we've got to think of these systems as better tools that amplify the human experience, that make the humans better at their job. And if we look back historically, 1983 was I mean, a lot of people don't remember it, but 1983 was a really big year um, because it was the year that Lotus 123 came out. And Lotus, and at the time, that was a big technological, this was the precursor to like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet program, right? And at the time, everybody thought that, oh, wow, this new tool, and it's going to get rid of all of the finance professionals. And in fact, the opposite happened, right? But what had to happen was the finance professionals had to release the way that they had been creating value, which was through calculations, because now the tool was going to do that aspect better. And they had to embrace a new way of delivering value, which was through strategy and through analysis. And the tool actually, instead of getting rid of those finance professionals, made them more effective. It did tasks for them. It didn't do the work for them. It made them better at doing the work. And I think we're seeing the same thing go on right now, but we've got to shift our attitude away from, I'm just going to offload this to, artificial intelligence, to use a giant word, to that's a tool that is going to help me become better at what I do, amplify my experience. And that's why, I mean, we're very committed to building, we call it technology in the loop. A lot of people call it humans in the loop. And we call it tech in the loop because the humans are always in control and the humans
Mhm.
should always be in control. And the tools like generative AI or NLP or machine learning or machine vision, right? Any of those tools are simply helping us do the work that we do better and faster. That's what I think the first thing that you've got to do is shift your mindset to what's the new way that I'm going to deliver value. Second is you've got to see the tool as a tool and not as, just a handoff shortcut where you don't have to be involved in.
We preach strongly about the human in the loop. I do like the technology in the loop. I may steal that one from you in the future, but we think for the foreseeable future, obviously, it's going to be very, very important to have that human in the loop and just make sure that, especially, obviously, each job loads differently. If it's a medical use case, you need 99.99% accuracy versus 80% accuracy for a process flow or something along those lines. And one thing we always talk about too is like in the generative AI space, especially in the AI race with US versus China and OpenAI and Meta and Google and all and Microsoft and those sorts of things. We're kind of building the guardrails as the train's going down the tracks, right? Can you talk about the importance of as you're building a solution, especially for something as meaningful and as human facing as HR? Why building those guardrails from the ground up is really, really important, and how maybe you guys did that.
Well, so one, I think this goes back to why I wish more practitioners, more domain experts would get into utilizing some of the base tools that we have available and start building solutions like we did with Propulsion AI. Propulsion AI isn't just an artificial intelligence platform. It is a blend of human and machine intelligence. And it's that blend that makes it really important. Now, as we started to make that blend, we did it with an eye to how do we do this ethically? How do we do it in a way that thinks about or is considerate of the things that humans would have been considerate of? And how do we build that into the platform? So we have very specific algorithms that when Athena is writing, she is writing with an eye toward non-discriminatory language, toward inclusive language, because that's important. We don't need to teach anybody to do that. We can teach Athena to do it. She can do it automatically. That's a handoff task that frees the humans, but it's also one that builds in some ethical consideration. The fact that we gave her the ability to do salary analysis and to draw salary data and then utilize it to ensure that we're building equity into the roles. So not only is she helping the manager think through what the role is going to accomplish, she's also helping the manager think about how do we equitably compensate a person who would do that work. Those are things that humans would think of, that if you have domain experts, they recognize humans would think of, and we build those into the platform. So we will continue to do that, right? The stuff that Athena does right now in role design has fewer of those implications. But farther down our roadmap are things like hiring and selection and performance management and one-on-ones. And those do have some considerations that have to be thought of. And so what we're already starting to design for is how do you get the demographics out of the equation so that we're just evaluating on the merits of whatever the particular issue is. And we're not considering things related to demographics, which immediately removes one of the biggest aspects of bias, familiarity bias, that tends to be problematic in hiring.
Yeah, that's a a special one because I remember Amazon got in deep water for using AI to help weed out potential hires, and they had extreme biases in those sorts of things. I'll see if I can find the. This happened like I think 2 years ago. I'll find the link to that, but and put it in the show notes and. Because it was just a fascinating story of how just a couple of bad decisions, whenever they're building those guardrails, led down this path, a really dark path once you actually looked at it.
I mean, there are plenty of examples. Well, I mean, I think there's an open lawsuit right now with Workday for something, very, very similar. And again, I mean, this is why domain experts need to be the ones that are building the solutions. I have an article that I wrote, and by the way, so I wrote this article in like a day and a half, and it normally would have taken me probably a week and a half. But I used two tools, one from Anthropic called Claude, a large language model that helped me do writing, and one called Perplexity that acted like a research assistant for me. And I still wrote the article, but I utilized those tools to help me write that article faster. One of the things that I argue in this article, which is sitting with the editorial board at Fast Company right now, and I'm hoping that they will agree to publish it, is that we have to think about AI deployment different than we do other technologies, where it cannot exclusively be the responsibility or accountability of the IT team. We've got to divide the deployment into two parts. One is governance, which should live with the strategic technology organization in the company. But then the other is deployment. And I think you've got to deploy systems, AI systems, with the domain experts. So if we're talking about deploying artificial intelligence to the shop floor in a manufacturing organization, that's got to live with plant management. They have to be the ones who are deploying it, thinking about the best use cases for it, interpreting the answers from it, right? It's not the IT team that's coming in to do that. If it's an HR application, it's got to live with the HR people. And so I argue first, you got to strip out all of the admin stuff and get it away from HR. And second, then HR really becomes you got to build in some new roles. Data scientist, not a role that typically lives in HR, but that is a role of the future, in my opinion, for the HR organization. Product manager, not a role that typically has lived in HR, but it's one that you've got to have. Because as we deploy the systems, we have to think about employees like customers. What are they using? Why are they using it? Where are they having difficulty? How do we shift the system so that they don't? Because it's not about just deploying the artificial intelligence technology. It's about getting a result from the deployment. And the people that will know how to do that are the domain experts. So I think you've got to divide the accountability. And in this case, you've got a way to get the ethical considerations to be heard is you let the domain experts do the deployment.
Yeah, and you make great points. And the big thing for us is we always preach creating a center of excellence, whether it's an AI center of excellence or data center of excellence across the organization, where you have those domain experts coming with the technologist and deciding the best way to roll out and implement solutions. And so in the past, especially in corporate IT, it's been someone at the corporate vice president level was making a decision based on a product, and then the IT team was rolling it out, and then there was just a claim for the top down, like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're building it. And again, with AI, it's completely different. Like you said, you start with the domain experts, you start with the boots on the ground. How can we build a tool that works for this department? How can we build a tool that enhances the workloads of this department? And no IT team is ever going to know how to do that. You're going to have to be, we are a business analysts more than we are technologists as consultants. And I say that is because I need to understand your businesses and your pain points. And the IT generally doesn't have time to do that. They're just fighting fires all day.
I argue in that same article that the same kind of split is necessary for IT. You got to split out the tactical from the strategic, and they have different roles. I know you take my point, and I know you heard it, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. I don't think there's one center of excellence for artificial intelligence in the company. I think those centers, my point about deploying the systems with domain experts means that there are multiple centers of excellence for the application of artificial intelligence technology. You might have a center of excellence that lives in IT that really is about the possibilities. What can the tech do for you? But it's really not, the deployment of that system. The center of expertise is with the domain expert, or should be, in my.
Yeah, I agree completely with that for sure. And I've been through massive deployments, and the ones that were successful were always the ones where the thought leaders, ProjectWise as an example, it's a giant engineering platform, like an SAP for engineering drawings and everything. And it had to be led by the engineers. I don't care how much I knew how the software works. I didn't know it squat. And I have engineering background, and I still didn't live it every day, didn't know what was important with their drawings and things. So I agree. Like, it's the same thing with ERP, right? Whenever you have you're rolling out an accounting system, the accounting team better be involved with that entire process. That's your first step of success. And AI being so personal to whatever data you're training it on and whatever processes you're trying to solve, it just makes even more sense.
It's the
So
Salesforce model. As Salesforce was
yeah,
first to this, they moved the model away from the tech team and to the sales team, and that's where they really found
exactly.
success. And I think that's the model that we should be following.
Great. I can keep talking to you all day. I know you're a busy person. I've got some stuff I need to take to as well. So I think we can start wrapping things up. And we just like to wrap things up a little bit more playful, just a rapid fire round, just to get an understanding of some insights and things you've already Claude and Perplexity and stuff. Just maybe some tools and stuff that we haven't heard of or we can share with the folks. And so if you don't mind, we get started with that.
Okay.
So what's one AI myth you want to bust today? Like you could get one thing through to, especially to like the decision makers.
Find a vertically integrated SaaS product and start with it. And find something that is scalable. Don't look to do a big ERP system type deployment. Start small because you are going to learn things in that. I think you got to treat it like you are starting a business, right? You want to do something, learn from it, pivot it, move forward, right? Apply the lesson. And I think that's the same thing here. So grab a tool like Propulsion AI. I mean, if I can do the commercial for my own company, right? Easy to deploy, rapid, time to result, and, plug it in and let it go. And, find multiple places that you can do that and start today.
Yeah, that's the reason we call the podcast Start Small, Think Big, because that's exactly how we think too. You have to get that low hanging fruit. You have to get that momentum. And once you have the momentum and you get buy-in from others across the organization, it's just going to get easier and easier and easier. And it's going to be easier to prove out the ROI. Because let's be honest, from a decision maker perspective, they're like, how much is this going to save us? And the beauty of these tools, AI and automation specifically, you're saving people's time, which is very easy to correlate to cost savings. So that's great. What's your favorite AI tool outside of Propulsion that you use daily or you think is just a hidden gem out there?
I mean, I gave you the two that I use, and I use them regularly. One is Claude. I think Claude does a better job of writing than ChatGPT does. And I use Perplexity for research. And I'm on both of those tools on an almost sort of hour by hour basis.
Yeah, I actually use Perplexity's browser, and I've been getting used to that for my work browser. And I do love the Perplexity browser Perplexity, because you can choose the different models at any from the different providers and things. And for folks that who are listening and don't know, Perplexity Pro is actually free through lots of different things. You can go sign up for free through your PayPal account. So I'll put a link to that in the show description, and I'll also put a link to the Perplexity browser. It's a little risky to use, so if you're not technical, I would say wait off on the agentic type stuff. But it just shows the future. Like Scott was saying, you can have it go research, do a really in-depth research for you. And then you come back 15, 20 minutes later and you have everything you need to at least get you started and point you in the right directions and save you so much time. So I live by Perplexity and Claude as well. So those are great tools.
Let me throw a hack in there too, because one thing that everybody worries about is what's called hallucination with large language models. And for people who don't understand exactly how the generative AI tools work, they're just predictors. They're just predicting what the next best word is to put in the sentence. And so occasionally you will get that model inventing something that isn't there. You can get around that to a certain degree by how you ask for information. And so one of the things that I build into every ask that I have is, if you are going to utilize a fact or a statistic, you have to cite it for me. I have to understand what the source of that material is, because that's another ethical consideration that I build into my own workflow, right? I am not going to stand on the fact because it was given to me by a system. I'm going to understand where it came from, and is it a real source, and is it a valuable source, a reliable and valid source? So that's a hack for getting around some of the hallucination, at least on facts and figures, is get it to cite them for you.
Yeah, that's another great one. So appreciate you adding that context. So what's one thing you wish founders would stop doing today?
I mean, like, the only way that I feel comfortable and not hypocritical giving this as a criticism is because it applies to me. You can't fall in love with your product. You have
100%.
to fall in love with your customer pain.
Yep.
And if you really understand that pain, the product is going to come. But I think all of us who have this idea in our head that we think is like the greatest idea ever, like, we fall in love with that. And I know I do, and on a regular basis, but it shuts down your listening.
Yep. And we actually started this company to build a software and solutions, and we still do. but we just found there was just this massive need for businesses to understand even how to utilize these tools. And so we pivoted our entire business. We still want to build this tool, and so you can scale software a heck of a lot easier. You can scale people, but at the same time, we saw that need. And like, I love that. Don't be married to your idea, because it's all about execution. It's not so much the idea. It's like, are you
Anybody
solving a
who's
problem?
watching us on YouTube or Spotify right now, they were seeing me shake my head yes on what you just said. But I want to call out something that I absolutely think is false. I think you can scale people. I just think you got to do it the right way, and we're trying to participate in.
I hope that your platforms like yours can, because that's the one thing we're struggling with, is finding the be, especially in the consulting space where they're a representation of your brand, and like one mistake can just undo years and years and years.
I'm
And a
excited
lot of,
for you to get on our platform and try it.
yeah, awesome. Looking forward to it. So what's one thing founders should start doing with AI?
I mean, that's like I can drive a truck through that. I mean, I think it depends on where they are. I could not have built Propulsion were it not for the artificial intelligence tools that I use. Because one, they were questioning my business logic. Two, they were helping me in areas where I lacked skill. Writing marketing copy is not something I'm really great at, but it's something I've gotten better at. Designing ads, thinking about ICPs, right? Like all of those things. So if you're not utilizing the tools that are available to you, journey for creating graphics, or the Claude and Perplexity, the way I have previously described it, right? If you're not using those tools, you've got to start using those tools. You can't do it alone. I think the interesting thing about being a founder, you come out of like a corporate job, and it's really easy in a corporate job to go, oh, like our marketing team sucks. And then you get out and you have to do it. And you're like, oh my God, marketing's hard.
So totally.
Sales is hard, and product is hard, and engineering is hard, and human resources is hard. And like, they're all hard jobs. And you don't realize it until you're the one that has to make the hard choices about what you do in each of those areas. And you need help. So start applying the tools.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, all these jobs that you would have thought, were really easy, they're not.
They're not.
Sales and marketing. Sales is the most frustrating thing in the history of things. I thought I could solve any technology problem on the face of the planet, but like closing a sale, there's nothing harder. Utilize all the tools at your disposal is what I would say. There's no tool that you should be married to, because they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses. Find the one that will fit your workflow the best would be my recommendation on top of what you've said. And I think the big thing from that perspective is, don't get set in your ways either. Like, always be looking to improve upon the ways you've done things in the past. Just because it worked well last week doesn't mean it's the most efficient way this week. And like, that's just that constant feedback loop, like you were saying, from the product perspective for your customers, and for, Propulsion's not where you started. That's the beauty, is what I love about being a consultant. I go in, and once the light turns on in the heads of these institutional experts who have this institutional knowledge that's specific to them, I'm learning new ways I would have never predicted I could have ever used AI and automation. And I think that's the real beauty.
Can I let me tell you one really short story, because it goes to kind of another thing that I think founders should do. I do a regular scan, because the tech and the products are changing so incredibly fast that you have to constantly repeat this, like, what's out there motion, and understand what's out there. And last week I did, I think I was using Perplexity, and I had said, I want you to go out and do a scan of all of the available HR tech, and I want you to break it down into these categories. And it did it. And one of the categories I had given it was role design, and it didn't come back with Propulsion AI. And I said to it, why were we not listed? And he said, well, you're not really positioned in a way that I would have thought to put you into this category. And I said, what do you mean? And so a discussion ensued about how Propulsion is positioned, and Perplexity actually was challenging my thinking about how we need to position the company so that we would get listed if anybody else was looking for these things. So that's like a year ago, I wouldn't have thought that I would be doing that, but I'm having a full-on conversation about market positioning of my own company with an artificial intelligence tool.
That's fascinating, and something I definitely need to do myself and challenge myself to do. That's a great AI use case that I think you've done the market research and things like that, but then whenever you have that positioning, I wouldn't have never even thought to do that. So thank you for sharing that.
Much of it I'm going to change or not. But the thing is, it was provoking my thinking, and there's a lot of learning and growth that happens. And it came out of a simple question: tell me what's out there.
Yeah, and iron sharpens iron, right? So like, that's the way I kind of look at that. Even if you're not going to make a change from it, it's gonna shift your perspective and your future thinking. And I think that's really important. Well, thank you so much for your time, Scott. We really do appreciate you being on. I think you have a breadth of knowledge and you're in an area that I think is super important, especially for startups and mid-market companies where they don't have these massive HR teams. It's like, how do we scale the right way? How do we find the right people? Propulsion AI, look forward to diving into it and doing a blog post about it in the coming weeks and testing it out. But if nothing else, I do appreciate you guys are doing things the right way. You're putting ethics in the forefront. You're putting empowering the users and listening to the users and getting that feedback. And I think that's regardless of what tool you're building, that's something, a roadmap that works for everything. And I think that's the truly important thing. So for the last couple of minutes, I'm a big fan of the hot ones on YouTube. So like use this camera, this camera, this camera, take a couple minutes, talk about yourself, give a pitch about Propulsion AI and let people know where they can follow you and how they can get their hands on the tool.
So, I mean, I'm super happy. I've been really fortunate, I think, on my journey. I've been the recipient of a lot of goodwill from people wanting to help, people who like our vision and have just been willing to give of themselves. And I feel compelled to do that same thing. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I am happy to have conversations, provide advice. I'm not a consultant. I don't charge, but I care. And I would love to be of help. If you need help or a perspective, I'm happy to give it. You can get me at linkedin.com/ Scott M is how you find me online. Scott Morris, and it's Propulsion AI is the company name. If you want to find us on the web, www.getpropulsion.ai, and you can catch our blog. We're pretty prolific on writing about what's happening in the industry and where the future of HR is going. And so grab us there. Get signed up for a free trial. We target businesses that are 250 to about 1,000, but the problems that we're solving are really irrespective of that. Those are just our targets for right now. We're finding a lot of interest from private equity right now, who are thinking about post-merger integration issues and who are drawing on Athena for help there. We're thinking about, or we're getting a lot of interest from recently funded startups who are trying to keep their funds focused on distribution and engineering and product, and who are not, they need to scale quickly, but they don't want to add overhead. Athena democratizes the expertise of chief people officers and makes it available to companies that otherwise probably wouldn't be spending money on those services. So, and then, we're used by leaders at companies like Disney and Forrester Research and ABC Fitness and Empath Health and others.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Scott. All the links to Scott's information will be in the show notes as well. And this includes a LinkedIn and Propulsion and all the other things we've talked about in our newsletter. Our newsletter is on LinkedIn. Just search Start Small, Think Big on LinkedIn, or search for Digital Meld on LinkedIn. Or if you want to just find everything in one place, linktree.com/Digital Meld. That'll be popping up on the screen right now if you're watching us on video. But for the most part, all of that, it's part of our newsletter that we release every week when we release an episode. And so thanks again, Scott, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We love having experts like yourself coming on and adding a different perspective and not hearing people hearing us drone on for 30 plus hours by ourselves. So your breadth of knowledge and experience, we haven't had a HR representative on yet. So thank you for doing a service to people, because that's something that's so important, right?
I didn't say it before, but I'm a fan of the show. I'm a listener. And so it was a real honor to be invited on, Brad. And I'm glad that you guys are doing what you do. I'm glad you do it the way you do it. And I was really happy to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And so thanks again for joining us, folks. We really do look forward to these conversations. We've been on a hiatus for a little bit because I was having some dental work done. Not so fun, but we're going to get back to the weekly releases every Monday, and the clips Monday through Friday on our social medias. And so look forward to those. Linktree.com/Digital Meld for everything, including the show notes and links to Scott. And so thanks again. Until next time, we'll see you soon. We want to hear about your AI and automation journey, and we'd love for you to get involved with Start Small, Think Big. If you'd like to participate or offer feedback, please reach out to us anytime via email at contact@digitalmeld.io, or use the contact form on our website, digitalmeld.io/contact. Also, please help spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks.